Yeah, what happened? What happened? It's not me.
No, it's just your fingers covering the camera.
Oh,
there we go.
Oh man, this is incredible to have both of you on with us here with celebrating NORML's 50th anniversary, and to have two living legends in the game, Keith Stroup and Tommy Chong, both names synonymous with advocacy, with activism, and with overall pushing the envelope when it comes to cannabis legalization nationwide and soon to be internationally as well. I appreciate both of you guys doing this, and third time is a charm. And I just want to talk a little bit about the advocacy over the years, the legacy of advocacy, where we are right now, and what needs to happen going forward for us to continue to have this movement from the people, right? So, yeah, if we could just open it up and just ask both of you, like, what was it like when, in the initial advocacy movement, like, how different was it then than it is right now? And what really sparked the conversation initially?
Well, I can tell you from my perspective at NORML, the work of the Marijuana Commission in 1972, when they issued their report, it was the first time ever that we'd had the federal government being honest about marijuana. Prior to that, everything was reefer madness and the dangers were all exaggerated. But in that commission report that came out in 72, they actually they said there's nothing particularly dangerous about smoking marijuana. It should not involve the criminal justice system. There should be no penalty at all for personal possession and use, and for not-for-profit transfer of small amounts, because they realized that's how smokers got their marijuana. They shared with each other. So even though the Congress didn't do anything with that report, I think that report helped shape public opinion a great deal, and it helped improve the public's perspective on who smokes marijuana. And during the early years, at least my perspective was, the biggest need was to convince people to come out of the closet if they could do so without screwing up their careers, because the image most non-smokers had of a marijuana smoker was somebody who was really down and out, a loser, an addict, a homeless person, whatever. So we needed to demonstrate, just as the gay community had to go through that same issue, we had to demonstrate by coming out of the closet that, no, we're just average Americans. We work hard, we pay taxes, we raise families. You got nothing to worry about from those of us who smoke marijuana. So, at any event, I was started off by saying, I think that report in 72 was truly one of the high water marks in the legalization movement. The others I would mention would be, of course, when California became the first state to legalize medical use in 96, and then when Colorado and Washington went full recreation in 2012. So I think those are the three milestones that stand out to me.
Right. What about you, Tommy? Like, what got you into the conversation publicly?
Yeah, well, I've always known marijuana was healthy, because years ago, I've been bodybuilding all my life. And when I met Arnold and all the healthy people, Arnold Schwarzenegger, they were so healthy. These guys wouldn't take a soda. They wouldn't drink a Coca-Cola. They wouldn't even, if it got somehow in their mouth, they'd spit it out. The only thing, and they wouldn't drink alcohol. At least the real healthy ones never drank alcohol. The only thing they would do, though, all of them, was smoke a joint. They would all smoke pot. And Arnold even put it in his, one of his movies. Him
Pumping Iron.
Pot. Yeah, Pumping Iron. And then, and because being a serious bodybuilder, I realized, because I had a choice. I was a musician. I had a choice to either become a serious bodybuilder or an alcoholic or a drug addict. There was no in between. And so I chose the healthy world. And then even cigarettes, the bouncer, you know, the bodybuilder that I would hang out with once in a while, he made sure that I quit smoking cigarettes. You know, every time he saw me with a cigarette, he'd take it out of my mouth, throw it on the ground, say, hey, you don't need this crap. And so in 1958, just after I started smoking pot, I used pot to quit smoking cigarettes. And it was, and by the way, it was so illegal back then that in Calgary, where I grew up, the cops didn't even know what it was because there was no pot around. They would stop the car, they'd search you for alcohol, and we would be smoking a joint, and they would just ignore it, you know. So what I found out very early in my career that it was not only harmless, but it would help you. It helped me concentrate. It helped me with my music. It helped me with everything in my life. It helped me make decisions. Like other than that, I was like the rest of the people. You know, I was going to school. I didn't know what I was going to be or anything else. The minute I smoked a joint, I knew exactly what I wanted to be, what I wanted to do. And I quit school the next day. I think I quit school and to become a blues musician. And I did, and I finally, you know, I made it all the way up to Motown and everything else, and it was always pot that propelled my career ahead. And then with my bodybuilding knowledge, I knew that all that crap they're telling me about how unhealthy it was and all that stuff was all lies. And then in order to get into Motown, before I got into Motown, I got introduced into the Black community through dancing. Because when I was like 15, 16 years old, the jive and the Lindy Hop was a big deal. And the best dancer was this Black football player named Tommy Milton. And Tommy Milton, I ended up becoming friends. In fact, he became the singer of our band that we put together called The Shades. Wow. And so Tommy introduced me to the Black way of life, you know, the Black community. And that meant dancing, that meant party. That was, I mean, we just, if you knew someone that had even an apartment, we would not only go to dances, we'd dance all night at the dance and then go to someone else's house for the party and keep dancing. And we never stopped. So there was no rhythm and blues in Calgary where I grew up. But we got the records from the porters on the train. What they would do, the Black porters from the States would come up to Canada on the train, and then they would bring the records with them, like 78s, you know, all the blues records and that. And so we got turned on to Bo Diddley, we got turned on to Muddy Waters, long before anybody else in Canada knew what we were doing. And so when we put the band together with this music, I mean, we were before the Stones, we were before the Beatles, and that's how early that we got into it. And so once I got, and then in the jazz, then I got turned on to jazz, and in the jazz, again, you know, their drug of choice was heroin for the most part, but they all smoked pot, you know, a lot of them before they would go on. One of the greatest jazz singers, John Hendricks, Lambic Hendricks and Ross, he was one of the greatest singers, probably the first rap singer, you know, because he was a wordsmith with all the words in that.
Spoken word.
Yeah, spoken word. But he had a real, because he was another health nut, you know, like Dick Gregory, all those guys, you know, they would just juice and all that stuff. But before he went on stage, he would take a little bit of hash, little roll of hash, and then he'd break off a menthol cigarette filter and put the hash in the filter and then smoke it through the filter so it wouldn't ruin his voice. But they all got high. And not only got high, but they created music like John Coltrane. They created all this stuff. And they not only created music, but they had a philosophy that they turned me on to, and that changed my whole life. And so, you know, it wasn't like with me, it wasn't a protest or any kind of like the heck with the establishment thing. It was something I had to do in order to stay in that culture, in that community, and to be able to have a voice, to be able to understand what they were playing, what music, what they were trying to do, what they were doing. So, so I always knew that it was good for you. And by being in the Black community, I always felt and was aware of the racism that went in Calgary, down the States, everywhere. In fact, I came close to dying one time. I had a band. We came up through. We're coming to down to LA again. We stopped. We were driving. We had to drive everywhere. There was no flying, and so we're driving. It was 4 in the morning, something. We stopped at a service station, and there was an old hippie homeless guy arguing with the garage owner or the attendant, garage attendant. And so, you know, me, you know, being a loudmouth, or, you know, I sort of, I started laughing because it was funny, you know, the hippie, I don't know what they're arguing about. It just struck me as funny. And so I started laughing. And then the garage owner looks at me and he called me a name. He said, "What are you laughing at?" You know, MFer. And I, you know, being Canadian and being an ex-hockey player, you know, I'm ready to go to war. And Freddie, the drummer, the Black guy, he grabbed me, and he wouldn't let me talk. He just grabbed me and pulled me outside. And he told me, he says, "Motherfucker's got a gun."
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't say anymore. We just got in the car and left. I knew, I learned really fast the dangers of being Black in America at that time of culture. And so being caught with pot was nothing. It was being caught being Black, right, and being in the wrong neighborhood and saying the wrong thing to the wrong person. And so when the cops started coming after us, like they did in where was it? Vancouver. Mm-hmm. Vancouver. They cut the 4 tops. Remember the 4 tops?
Yeah.
The maid went into their hotel room, found a roach, and she called the cops. Or the owners of the hotel called the cops. The cops got the room next door to the 4 tops. And then when the 4 tops came home from their gig, the cops bust in the room and arrested all of them, including the white comedian that was with him. And that was the only time he was funny. The cops told me later, because he kept saying, "Hey man, I'm not with these guys." Look at me. Do I look like a 4 top? And they just ignored his ass, and they threw him all in jail. All in jail for a roach. Yep. For a roach that wasn't even, you know, they couldn't even connect it to him. And so what they had to do, I guess Gordy and, you know, Motown paid a big fine and got him out of jail and got him out of town. And I don't know if they were even allowed back into Vancouver because of a roach. So what I found out real early is how racist not only the pot law, but all laws. And so then that was how I, you know,
started speaking about it, got active.
Yeah. That's got me involved in it.
Got it. And so Keith, like, where do you think the movement is today?
Well, I mean, for one thing, when you realize that we enjoy the support of about 2 out of 3 Americans now. The latest polls have been showing full legalization approved by roughly 68% of the American public, 2 out of 3 Americans. What it means is, of course, that we now can begin to exercise a political power to establish whatever system of marijuana regulation we think would work. There's still a lot of work to be done to resolve the details. Well, first off, only 11 states in the district have fully legalized recreational use, so we have a lot of work to do there. But we're making progress. We're adding a state or two almost every year. But what's most important is that we now enjoy the support not just of the smokers, but of the non-smokers. So we're in that phase where, for example, we should no longer have to fight to maintain the custody of a minor child simply because we smoke marijuana. It should not be a presumption that we're an unfit parent, yet it is today in many states. We shouldn't have to fight to defend against a driving under the influence charge simply because we had THC in our system. They should have to show that we were driving while impaired. You shouldn't have to worry about losing your job because you smoke on a weekend and they drug test you on a Monday morning and you've still got THC in your system. But in fact, in most states, that is still allowed. So we've still got a lot of work to do, but we're in that phase now where I think we're close to being able to say we want marijuana smokers treated fairly in all aspects of their lives. We're not there yet, but that's our goal at NORML, and I think over the next 4 or 5 years, that's what you're going to see a lot happen. We're no longer going to have to prove that we're reasonable people. Smoking marijuana simply is no different than drinking a glass of wine in the evening.
I definitely agree with that. And and speaking of what your response earlier, Tommy, about like the Black experience, man, that's crazy. That was in Canada too, and then that's nuts.
Hey,
and a lot of that is happening now today also. Like, how do you feel about what's going on today with the racism persisting?
It's and it's kind of weird too, because now you've got a lot of Black billionaires, you know. Now the brothers, you know, they're going to have to start, you know, spreading that around a little bit. You know, you can only buy so many gold chains. You know,
you can never buy enough. You can never buy enough gold chains.
You know what I'm saying? But you know, like I know, like I work with Dr. Dre, you know, and Snoop and all those guys, you know, and see, it doesn't matter how rich you are, how famous you are, or anything else. If you're Black, man, you're a marked man, you know, or no matter where you are, you see. But getting back to the weed, I think we owe everything to Sanjay Gupta of CNN.
Agreed. Yeah.
Because until he showed, see what he did. I mean, no one really gives a shit about, you know, musicians or Blacks or whites or hippies, any of that crap. But when you see a little baby get cured with marijuana of her epilepsy,
right?
When you hear that story of a little baby hugging her mother for the first time without seizures, because she took that THC that she needed, that she needs it to this day. And when they legalized it in Colorado, I was there at one of the dispensaries, and the lineup to get into the dispensary looked like a lineup to go see Jesus to be healed, because they were in wheelchairs, they were in crutches, they were old, they were there to get their medicine. I didn't see one hippie in the lineup. I didn't see one jazz musician. All I saw was sick people that need their medicine. And see, that was the fallacy of this whole, you know, racist attitude toward using marijuana or using and even the word marijuana, you know, it's slang, Mexican slang for weed.
Right.
And the other thing too, here's another, that this is what I prophesize. You know, we have a hard time banking. In fact, we can't bank our money. You know, if we're in the marijuana business, we can't bank our money. I predict that we're going to have our own banks. I predict that the industry is going to have their own bank, and I predict that marijuana is going to be more current. It's always been currency, by the way. It's been currency since the beginning of time, since India. And that's why the Mexicans, when they come across the border, that's one thing they brought. They brought a bag of weed because they could. That was money. That meant food. That meant shelter.
Yep.
That meant everything. That meant transportation. Everything. That bag of marijuana, it's still worth money, and
Yes.
to this day. And that's why they're having a hard time trying to grab that money, because you can't steal. That's a great thing about our civilization.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. The reason you can't steal is because nature says whatever belongs to you, you will go to you, and whatever if it belongs to someone else, you won't be able to keep it. And so that's what Trump's finding out. That no matter how much money he steals, he can't keep it because it'll just disappear. And that's the same thing with marijuana. When the cartels and that went into the big money game, that's when it got all crazy for them. But as long as they were bringing weed across to help people and to help themselves, survive and everything else, it's good. So I see I see even more. Like when I said it should be considered medical, what I meant, it should be treated as the substance that it is. It is a medical substance. That's all I mean.
No, and just to touch on one of your points there when you said it looked like they're lining up for Jesus, because there's no hippies or jazz musicians, because all the hippies and jazz musicians got better shit than what they had in the dispensaries when they first legalized.
Well, they don't. Well, same with me. Line up. People ask me, say, what do you think about, the cost of marijuana? I said, I don't think I paid for marijuana ever.
Right,
I was too poor when I couldn't afford it, and now I'm too famous.
Right. Yeah, that's like me too, because I went to college, and after college, that's when I started selling weed. So I sold weed initially, to actually support my opioid habit, like I got from college football, but also so I could smoke for free. And then, like, when I got in the industry, it's like I just didn't have to ever buy any weed anymore.
Yeah.
My homeboys, this shit back here is my homeboys would give me free shit. So I support my buddies in their businesses, though. So I do go out and buy shit from them directly in other dispensaries. But other than that, I have great shit. So
yeah. Try this. Yeah.
Exactly. I got this new strain. Try this cross right here.
People always ask me, well, back in the day, when they asked me, what's your favorite strain? And I tell them, anything given to me by a naked woman.
It's never a bad one. Never a bad one. And Keith, so and going forward, what do we need to do? I mean, we spoke about this as of last week, Keith, and legalization is right around the corner. So whether it's Trump's Hail Mary to get reelected, or whether it's Joe Biden and you look on his website and he wants the thing to be just all corporate, for big pharma, it's important that it comes from the people, right? How we shape legalization should come from the people who were oppressed under prohibition, right?
Well, and in particular, what I would say, I don't think any of us really want the federal government to dictate marijuana policy. What we really want is for the federal government to get out of the way so the states can experiment with different versions of legalization. That's the old theory that states are laboratories of democracy. And in each state so far that's legalized marijuana, they've done it slightly different than the prior few. So we're learning things as we go along. But there is a bill pending in Congress now, the MORE Act, for example. It wouldn't just reschedule marijuana, it would deschedule. It takes it totally off the Controlled Substances Act, so the states would be free to do whatever they want. They're free right now simply because the federal government has chosen not to try to stop them, to kind of look the other way. We need to change that law so the feds don't even have that option. But again, we're not looking to have the federal government legalize it in the sense that they're going to set up regulations and determine how it's done. I think we'll do that much better from the grassroots up by going state by state. Got it.
Got it. And Tommy, you have some excellent product out right now, right?
Oh yeah. Well, you know, we're because
the future of Chong's.
Well, the CBD. See, CBD oil, you can sell them in Walmart, you know, and so, and by the way, when I was in Amsterdam, I shot that movie Still Smoking in Amsterdam, and I went on a barge. It was like it was kind of like a museum sort of, very historical thing, and they told me something really interesting about marijuana. You know the word drugstore. Mm-hmm. You know the word drugstore. The word drug. Where you know where that came from? Where? It's a Dutch word, droog. Droog. It was a drugstore. And and droog means to dry. So they would take their hemp, their marijuana, to the store to dry, to cure. And it was called a droog store. And so over the years, it ended up being called a drugstore.
Wow.
And so that's how far back this plant, this is how much influence it has in the medical world. So that's what I'm saying about being medical, because that the drugstore itself and the
that's
Dutch,
crazy.
you know, they're so they were brilliant because even look at they had windmills. Mm-hmm. They had windmills way back then, man. They pushed the ocean out, and it was all in marijuana influence. Just like the phone I'm holding now and the computers that we use now, all marijuana influenced.
Yep.
Because it affects the brain. And so we don't have to worry about what's going to happen, because we've got computers and everything else that are telling us the best way to do everything. And that's what's going to happen. Right now we're in the you know, the early stages of it all, you know, because you've got cops, ex-DEA guys in the marijuana business. And as far as my business goes, that's what's going to give me my retirement thing, where I can sit at home and just go to the mailbox and collect, because now my products, it's going to be all over the world, basically, and even if I get, you know, like a 5%, you know, that's all I need, because I don't need much. But what I see happening, like I said, Sandra Gupta with the showing how important it was with kids,
right?
And by the way, the Vietnam War, that's why it stopped. It was because of the potheads, you know, you know, knowing that it was wrong on both sides. So we got a great future ahead of us, you know, and it's all thanks to weed. You know, when I'm sitting here holding this phone, when I'm looking at the phone, I go, wow, that's right. The pothead said, hey, I got an idea. Why don't we do this? And there you go.
All right. Was there anything, you know, like originally, you know, behind the idea of the Cheech and Chong movies that's still in its subtle messages? There's like a lot of gems in there, right?
Totally.
There are any of those subtle messages that are really, really prevalent in today's society?
Absolutely. To begin with, you know, I wanted to show the world that all lowriders weren't gang members. You know, that was the thing that really bothered me when Trump said, you know, they bring in drugs, they're bringing crime, you know, they're raping, you know, that's an image that they had with the Latinos. And so the first thing I wanted to do was change that image. And then the second thing I wanted to do, which I did, was show that a rich kid from a wealthy family ends up being like a long-haired drummer in a so-so rock band, and is only wants to get high. That's all he wants, to find a pot somewhere. And then we showed the culture. We showed the mixed band. We showed all that. I wanted to show it all, but I wanted to do it with love and humor. Because one thing I learned, hanging with the jazz musicians, and that one thing the jazz musicians all have was a sense of humor. These guys were, that's where Red Fox got his humor from. That's where all the good comedians, Dave Chappelle, all of them, man, it all came from that weed that the jazz players were smoking. And because these guys, they're so good at hearing things, and you can hear notes, and humor is truth. See, that's what jazz is too. Yep. When you hear really good jazz, you're hearing truth. And when you hear really good humor, you're hearing truth. And so that's all Up in Smoke really was just one big bundle of laughs, which were truth, based on truth. If you notice it, no one got hurt. No one got killed. No one got maimed. No one lost anything. Everybody won. Everybody got something. And we even showed the Hare Krishnas. And by the way, you notice there's no more Hare Krishnas? They're all gone.
Yeah, I did see some. There is some, because Oaksterdam University here at Culver City, right? Yeah. I had no idea. So
it's next to it.
Yeah, it's right next door. I had no idea, because they were giving me the lodge, you know what I'm talking about. It's gonna come to be the Masons Lodge, right?
Yeah.
So Oaksterdam like invited me over there, and I was parking. I had no idea. I was like, are those Hare Krishna?
Yeah,
so like,
they own the building.
That's great. That's great. I've never like what the hell? There's a resurgence.
I got in a fight with one. Did I tell you? I did. I went to film it too. I was at the airport waiting for my daughter to come in from France, and the Hare Krishnas were protesting the fact that the airport was every time they tried to beg money, the airport would come around, airport employees would come around, make noise and bother them, and so the Hare Krishnas were protesting, and this one Hare Krishna guy come up. And he got in my face, like I say, I'm from Canada, I'm a hockey player. So I kind of pushed him away, and he attacked me with all this karate stuff. He knocked I was wearing glasses at the time. He knocked my glasses off. And I'm looking for my glasses, and I'm thinking, looking at the floor, and I'm thinking I should drive this guy's head into the floor. And then something came over me. I think it was the pot, said, no. Don't hit, don't do nonviolent. And so I became a victim. So I did, no matter what he did, I just stopped the blows. I just put my hands up. I never attacked him. Next thing you know, the cops come, they grabbed the guy, and all the witnesses said, well, he attacked that man never did anything. Next thing you know, the guy's in jail. They got a little jail at the LAX, and they put him in there. And then they come up to me after, the cops, and said, do I want to press charges? And I said, no. And the guy said, well, come on down. I want to show you him in jail. So I walked down there, and I saw the guy. And the guy, I guess he figured out who I was. He was all apologetic and everything else.
Man.
But it was funny.
And so, and Keith, so when you started NORML 50 years ago, right? If you knew back then that you'd be having that same fight 50 years later.
Well, I could, be committed to this project for 10 or 15 years. Now I look back and it's been 55. 55 years since I started smoking, 50 years since NORML was founded. Yeah. See, I didn't start smoking, unlike Tommy, I didn't start smoking until I was a freshman in law school. So I was a fairly late comer in that regard, but I did take to it well once I tried it.
Yeah. And so Yeah, and so we are where we are today. There's all these parallels, and everything keeps on coming back, and it's all circular. I mean, Tommy was talking about, like, like the origin of drugstore, like your old Droog, right? And everything comes back. Everything is 360 degrees, right? And history has a way of echoing, as we have seen. And we incrementally work our way forward. So I think we're at one of those points right now where we are going to move forward.
Let me suggest
somewhat.
it too, if I might. Let me suggest.
Please.
I honestly think that the largest single factor that accounts for the enormous progress we've made in the last few years is we've outlived our opponents. Because it was my generation, it was older Americans who really bought into the reefer madness mentality. And as long as they were alive and active, man, it was tough to change marijuana laws. But the younger generation, whether they smoke or not, it's no big deal to them. They've been around it all their lives. So that's why all of these polls show us every year we pick up 2, 3, 4% more support. So again, I'd like to say it's because we're craftier than we used to be, or we refined our arguments, and I hope we have a little. But the reality is we outlived our opponents.
It's true. You can't kill an old stoner. We're just like roaches because we smoke them.
Yeah, old stoners never die. They just smoke themselves away.
They end up in the wind.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
All right, and yeah. I mean, so one last question for both of you. So, like, Tommy, on the brand, like, where's the brand going? What you said, like, in the CBD world as well, like, where do you think that what are you doing to develop that? Are you doing like more like medical packaging?
Well, oh yeah, all the packaging. It's going to come down to a little brown paper bag. That's what it's going to come down to.
Just like the old days.
It's going to come back to Ziploc bag.
No plastic. No plastic. It's going to be a brown paper bag. Because weed does better in paper, No, the thing is about weed, there's so many strains and all that stuff, and people are just going all around. The thing is, it affects the brain, and so what you want to get out of the weed, it's not the weed itself, it's what it does to the brain. I just tell potheads, work on those ideas that you get. There are gems. See what it did here, and I'm not being facetious here at all. When I was in jail, I couldn't smoke. I couldn't smoke for 3 years, and it never.
You move your hand.
Oh yeah, it never bothered me that I never smoked, because one of the great things about weed is that you don't have to smoke it. Oh shit! You can still hear me, right?
We can hear you.
Okay.
That's a great picture there.
Yeah. Anyway, you don't have to smoke it. What you can do, work on the ideas that it gives you. For instance, I've got an idea that I'm working on. A couple of ideas: how to save the world through movies. I can't really get into it, but it's the ideas that pot gives you. Work on those ideas. That's how we got the computer. That's how we're going to get out of this pandemic. By the way,
right?
It's to our brains. Now, what I want to do with my weed, because I'm getting to the point where I'm going to be making a ton of money. I'm going to use that money. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to create schools where you pay the students to attend. Instead of a job, having the work and pay the way to school. I think that what I want to do is, with my billionaire friends and everything, is create a system where we pay kids to go to school. We pay them to learn, and we tell them what we want them to learn. according to their thing, you know, because the thing right now, the whole idea, and this is what the pandemic, I think, has shown us, is that it's not about money. It's not about money. It's what you do with the money. That's the main thing. It's how you do it. Money is a tool, and if the tool is used properly, it can create. If it's used wrongly, it can destroy. So in order to create, what I want to do, like I said, is to encourage other people. Like I said, I've got billionaire friends. I got Trumpies. You know, they don't admit that they're Trumpies around me, but and their biggest problem, they're making so much money. People now, when you hit that billionaire stage, you will never live long enough to even spend a portion of it. So what you got to take that money out of the banks and out of that, and put it into the community, right, to learn, to teach, to schools. So schools should not cost a penny. People should be paid to go learn, because after they learn, look what you got. You know, the last thing I want to say, you know, for physical, this is my other plan too, is there's a dance that I've been trying to learn since since I discovered it. It's called tango. You know, Argentine tango.
Uh-huh.
Argentine tango. Check it out. I want you guys to get on the internet, check out Argentine tango. Look how much fun it is. Look how beautiful it is. Look how sexy it is. And look how old the people are that are dancing.
Right. You
would never get too old to dance Argentine tango. And so what I'm doing now with my son, I'm creating like a Argentine yoga studio, you know, Argentine yoga. So you don't have to go to a special dance. You don't have to have a partner. I'm getting routines that you learn that will teach you the moves, and that will keep you young, that will keep you vibrant, and that will give you decorum, because part of the Argentine dance is that they have rituals that you cannot. First of all, you have to dress properly. There's no talking while you're dancing, and when the women sit on one side, the men sit on the other side, or roam on the other side. And when the man wants to ask a woman to dance, he walks over to her and he asks her with his eyes. He just gives her that, do you want to dance? If she doesn't want to dance, she looks away. If she wants to dance, she smiles and holds out her hand, and then he takes her hand. This is the kind of situations that you want your kids to learn. You want them to learn that from the beginning. And so rather than get a bigger boat, get a bigger plane, get a bigger house, you know, I don't need that. You know, right, what I need? I need neighbors that I can smile at and know that they're smiling because they're learning.
Yes,
that's what I see.
Yes. And Keith, what about you? Like, what is a utopian future of cannabis look like? Let's say we win the war, right? Like the war.
Yeah.
We win the war. It's for the people. Going forward, we're able to teach people how to fish, right? Or teach people to be self-sustainable in this entire movement. What does that look like?
Well, it certainly requires that all states eventually allow the individual to grow marijuana for their own use or for the use of them and their friends, even if they're not going to be in the commercial industry. And most states have. The only legalized state that doesn't allow homegrown right now is Washington, and there's a major effort underway to amend that law so you can. So, you know, I want to confirm that I agree with Tommy that one of the biggest benefits of smoking weed is that it is really a creative experience. And I too, when I've got any piece of writing that I've got to do, I lock myself in my home office and get really stoned as hell and sit down and think freely and write everything that comes into my head down. Then I get a good night's sleep, come back to the next morning, and some of it I laugh about. I think, boy, you must have been stoned as hell. But almost every time, there are a couple of things that should have been obvious to me without getting high, but they weren't obvious. I hadn't thought of them until I got high. So literally, any serious work I'm going to do and that I have some advance notice, I certainly go through a period of getting stoned as I can and thinking about it, letting my mind go free. So I think what's ahead for us is that you're going to have a lot more people utilizing that aspect of marijuana. It won't just be let's get high and have fun. It'll be let's be as creative in our lives as we can be. And frankly, as people get older, there's an increase in marijuana smoking. And I think it's because older people have time on their hands, and all of a sudden, walking the dog is a lot more fun if you're stoned than it is if you're not, as well as we have a lot of aches and pains as we get older. So yeah, I think what I see ahead is marijuana will play a far more prominent role in people's lives looking forward than it has even in the